Alright, I'm back. In my bonus video, I've shown how to make this structure. And yeah, I left it in 2 pieces, as you can see. It's a lot easier to get this in if it's in 2 pieces. And I definitely want to make it as easy as possible. So that link is down below. Go check it out if you want to learn how to make the structure. I've got the top made. I've got the details in the walls done, and I've made this base. And if you were paying close attention to my last section where I was showing how to sew in the windows here, you'll notice that I actually started off and put them on the wrong end. So I undid that and put them where they actually belong. And if the only way to tell is that the door that has the pull to open sign is just a little larger than the one that will have the St. John's ambulance sign. Just like with the structure, this is a little wider than this one, and that's to make it so that this overlaps ever so slightly and makes this door push in like it's supposed to. There's the detail work. You can see where I stitched what the back looks like, where I stitched the windows. So there's that. And I promised when I made the base that I would show how to get rid of that lump right there and make it a lot smoother transition. So, whoa, sorry about that. I've got to figure out a better way to hold this camera. So we have a slip stitch where we join the last round of the base here, and then we fastened off, and you just basically chain one and then pull the yarn all the way through. And to get rid of that look, you're not going to actually get rid of the stitch itself. We're just going to make it look a little better. You're going to gently tease out the tail thread there, or yarn there, and then carefully tease up the loop that you made. And then here's where it kind of gets a little tricky. Right here is the first stitch, the first single crochet of the last round, the first one. We want to lay this down like this and just sort of measure up. We want this loop to measure the same as this loop. So I'm going to tease it down just a little, fold it over. Look, it's still a little too big. Tease it down just a little bit more, and that's perfect. So we got the yarn coming out here. What you want to do is take your needle from the underside, go under. You know how when we crochet we go under this V here, we go through that space right there. Well, that's what you're doing with your needle, but the wrong way. So go from the back to the front and pull your yarn through and kind of guide that loop so it'll sit directly over the loop of the first single crochet. So we're going under the second single crochet chain, or top of the second single crochet, and making the loop from the end sit on top of the first single crochet. So now that I've got that kind of sitting where I want, I'm going to take my needle from the top down, what's now the top, with I'm going to take my needle and go down through that and pull it down. And then, and I usually do this in one motion, but because I'm showing you, I want to make sure you see all the steps. Where that single crochet is, I'm going to take my needle and go through that. So I've come around, I've gone under the second single crochet, around, up through that same loop we started with, and now I'm going to force my needle through the first single crochet, and it's going to come out somewhere in that fourth round instead of the fifth round. So let's take it. I like to pinch it a little bit so nothing moves on me. Pull it down, and now you don't want to pull it too tight because you want all these chains to look the same. You want them to be the same. And if the one that you were working on is a little too big, you can take the one that we faked out, that's a new fake one, and kind of tug on that just a little to make the first one lay down flat and be the same size as the others. So now that I've got it faked out, it's a whole lot harder to see where that was. Now, if you count the chains on the top, you'll know that there's too many there, because you can count against this side and this side, or, you know, the other three, and you'll know that there's too many here. And that's just how that ends up playing out. Now I've got the yarn coming out here. I'm actually going to kind of take it through the path here, and I want to get my yarn all the way to one of the corners. Okay, so I'm going to do that, and I'll be right back. All right, I've made it to this corner. There's our faked out one. There's the one we were trying to hide or reduce its bulkiness. That's the fake one. And now I'm way over here on this corner, and I'm still coming out the top, so I need to dive down to the bottom. And the easiest way is just to literally just push through. And now I've got my yarn coming out this corner, and we are ready to attach this to the bottom of the wall section. And since I only have one needle with me right this second, I'm going to have to borrow that needle to do the very first part of this joining. And so I've now added my needle to the tail of this one. And please excuse my scratchy voice, it's just allergies. I got hay fever this time of year every year, which makes me sound a little raspy. I'm sorry about that. So we just need to close this door, and we're not going to close it all the way unless you are wanting to, unless you want to stuff this instead of doing the interior structure. You'll just do a ladder stitch back and forth to close this up. I just need to close the very, very bottom two corners here so that when I attach the bottom base square there, this will sit nicely. So I'm just going to take a stitch from where it's coming out there through the corner of the opposite end and back up through that corner, just like that. And then I'm going to finish the circle by one more time going through that, just like that. And now this, which is upside down, this bottom is now a square. It's closed up, and if you make it sit properly, kind of manipulate it how it's sitting so it ever so slightly overlaps. And when I say slightly, this little ridge of stitches, top of the stitches here, is overlapping the bottom of the, let's see, the top of those stitches are sitting over the bottom of those stitches. Okay, and it's just barely overlapping, which is what we need. So now I can just work my needle through and then tie off this string. We're going to need it to attach the top. My lovely stupid cat decided to chew on this tail thread, and it's no longer long enough. So I'm actually going to give this top structure here the same treatment I did to this one, and hide that last hide that last little lump there. We don't want it there. We don't want to see it. So I'll be back when I have this fixed, that corner lump free, and have fastened off this yarn. I'll be right back. Okay. I finished off fixing this. It's not perfect, and the reason behind that is that this final row was a slip stitch row all the way around, and that sits the stitches sit this way rather than this way. If you look, they actually sit and make a turn. They sit this way, and that's going to make this a little bit lumpy anyway, but that's going to be in the back when I finish it. When I add it, I'll make sure that I put it towards the back so it'll be a little bit less visible. So that's fixed. The TARDIS walls are stitched together, and now I can add my base to the bottom of the TARDIS walls. Now, even though I've made this lump disappear for the most part, it's still slightly there. You can still tell that that is where I ended. So what I want to do is make sure that I put that towards the back of the TARDIS as well. So here's the doors, that's the front, or the opposite wall, and put the TARDIS walls, and that back, that part with the slight lump ending together. And now the TARDIS is going to sit here, and this whole outer last row, or round there, round number 5, is actually going to be sitting to the outside of the TARDIS, so you get this slight overhang. Which helps with the shaping, make it look a little bit more TARDIS-like, TARDIS-ish, esque, whatever it is. So take your needle, and we're going to be doing a ladder stitch. Here's the lump. Here's the back wall. We're going to do a ladder stitch. A ladder stitch is this one's a modified one. You're going to take your yarn is coming out this corner. You're going to take your needle, and you're going to go back to front, into the TARDIS wall at the corner. Go take your needle over just one row, and take your needle through there. Then you're going to go to the opposite piece, the base, and stick your yarn needle in there, skipping all of this. You're going into the bottom of the stitch. This is the top of the stitch. We're going into this one right here. And you can actually do a slight whip stitch where you whip this part up here. That's the modified ladder stitch, and then ladder stitch the bottom. So whip here, ladder here, and that actually works out pretty well. I prefer to just do a complete ladder stitch, or I'm sorry, I prefer to do the modified ladder stitch rather than the regular ladder stitch. simply because then, oh, I'm sorry. Then, boy, it's really bouncy today. Because what happens is this, instead of being forced to lay down, it's actually going to be able to stand upright like it's supposed to. So do your modified ladder stitch. So I took out the top part of that ladder stitch, and now I'm just going to whip. So I've come through, I started here, I've come through the corner, and now I'm just, instead of going here, I'm actually going to go skip down to the base there and make the bottom half of the ladder stitch. So top half is the whip stitch. Find a spot directly opposite the end of the ladder on the base, and then whip to the top, and then go and skip over. Here's where it's coming out. Skip over just a little. Do your ladder, the bottom half of your ladder stitch. Then the top half is a whip stitch. And you're going to repeat that until you get to this corner. Then you'll just turn the corner and keep going. I'll go ahead and finish this particular section off, and then you'll be able to do it on your own. When you get over here, you treat it just the same as anything else that you've been doing. So bottom half of the ladder stitch, top half whip stitch, bottom half ladder stitch. And I'm saying bottom, even though on the camera it looks like I'm doing the top, because this is the base and that actually is the bottom of the TARDIS. So top half is a whip stitch, bottom half is the ladder stitch, top half is the whip stitch, and the bottom half is the ladder stitch. And now I'm at the corner. I'm ready to turn the corner and go up the opposite side. Now you'll notice that I'm stretching this so that I can pinch the corner at the corner, and that actually keeps this from stretching too much, or this from stretching too much. Keeps everything nice and aligned. So top half whip stitch, which I just did the backwards way. Don't do that. I need to come from the back to the front. And everything that you do can be undone until you tie it off, in which case you'll have to cut instead of just pull it out. You have to cut the yarn, and I always like to double check and make sure I've got it in the right spot before I cut my yarn. When I'm making something just sitting there without the camera in my face, that way I can take it out easily if I've screwed it up. So that was the whip stitch. This bottom part is that ladder stitch into the whip stitch. Do not catch the details that you stitched in, so don't get underneath that. Make sure you stay to the top of it. That way when you're done, this whole seam will just disappear. You won't actually notice it. But if you catch these, you'll definitely notice it. So back to the ladder stitch on the bottom, and whip stitch on the top. And here's where I'm going to leave you and let you finish doing the rest. Finish this side and then the other two sides, and we'll meet back up when we have this whole thing put together. Be right back. Alright, I decided to come back just so that I can show you how I'm handling the door intersection. So I've just finished this whip stitch and this bottom ladder stitch, and I'm just going to quite literally just keep going. Nothing special, but just to head off any possible questions. That's how I'm dealing with it. Hopefully that's going to make sense. I'm on the other side of that door intersection, and I have just done a whip stitch here, kind of crossed over where the intersection is, basically skipping it, and done the ladder stitch and then the whip stitch at the top, ladder on the bottom, just as I have been doing all along, and making sure that I avoid the dark blue, because I don't want that seen at all. I don't want these stitches to really be noticeable. So I'm headed to my last side here, and I will meet back up with you when I'm there. Alright, I'm at the very last corner here, and I've just done my final ladder stitch, and I just want to make sure that I get, see, there's a slight hole there. I kind of want to fill that gap a little bit by doing my whip stitch right there. As long as I don't pull it down too far, too hard, and stretch it out of place, you're never going to notice that that hole was there. And that's just because when I did this, I was using, let's see, front loops only, and that just kind of leaves a gap just naturally. So now I'm at the end, or back at the beginning, depending on your point of view. All I want to do is just go through and bury my yarn tail in so that I can fasten this off. And the easiest way to do it is to, oops, sorry, slid off my table there, is to get to the back, or the bottom, I mean, and just kind of work it like that. Oh, sorry. Just kind of work it in. And catch it slight bit there. When I do that, I actually work this kind of back and forth a couple of times, so that the yarn is making a zigzag pattern inside these stitches. It's kind of going zigzag, and that just helps with the pulling. Sometimes you'll see it in the crochet items, you'll see the tail actually work itself out, but if you zigzag it enough, and by enough you only have to do like 2 or 3 here, okay. If you zigzag it enough, it's not gonna it's gonna be less likely to pull out. So I think that's good enough for mine. I'm going to take my needle and dive on the inside here, and you can sort of just push the needle through, and then I'm going to cut it off. It doesn't have to be cut short here. It can be left a little long. Since it's on the inside, you're not going to see it. At this point, if you're going to just stuff it, instead of adding the structure to make this into a sort of door opening TARDIS, you can just attach the top here. This will be sewn up and rigid. You can drop it. Let's see, there's the lump. I'm going to put it in the back corner, and then you would just simply attach at the very right here to right here. So it's just a little over the walls there. The top sits slightly over the walls, which is the look we're going for. So this just sits barely on the inside, which is where we're headed now, is to do that. We're going to add it in just a minute. I'm sorry, we're not doing that right just a second. We're actually going to add the structure. If you wanted to stuff it, you would add your top now and skip the structure. Do 3 sides, leaving one side open just enough to when you added it, just you leave one side open so that you could add your stuffing and then finish it off, and then you'd be done with the TARDIS. It'd be stuffed and it'd be very cute. But it also, without the structure, it kind of loses its shape just a little bit. This one has the structure, and so does this one. But I didn't add the structure to the doors. I only added it on 3 sides, and you can see what it's doing to the doors. When you stuff it, you get the same effect. It just kind of makes the sides push, is that a word? Push out, kind of push out a little bit there. With the structure, it doesn't do that. Either way, it's really super cute. So you saw me just push that in. I'll show you again. Basically, you just want to make sure that the wide side of the door is on the wide side of the door. So this way is up. You're just going to take your structure and push as far down as it will go. We want the corner of the structure to sit at the corner here, there, and there. And to do that, you just kind of push on the corners of the structure with your thumbs and use your nails to pull up the TARDIS. Like that. So now, this is ready to be sewn in. And the only part I really, you can stitch all the way around if you want. You can stitch just like I'm going to do, just up the sides here, the door opening, because this is going to be attached to, the pyramid, and then the pyramid is going to sit on top, and we're going to stitch this to this. I don't find that stitching here is all that necessary. You can if you want to, that's up to you. So let's go ahead and do that. So take your yarn, and this is a fiddly bit, and I'm sorry, it is a little bit of a fiddly bit. The easiest way is to actually start without the TARDIS in place. To go ahead and take the first side that you want to work on and start it just like we did with these when we built the structure. Again, that's a bonus video. You're just going to wrap twice, and now it's actually going to be easier to get this sewn in. And again, I want this as easy as I can make it. So now that's in place, I can actually go through. I'm trying to catch that tail thread that I just dropped. There you go. And you're just going to quite literally just sort of whip stitch that and ladder stitch like we did before. Ladder stitch on the actual crochet door and whip stitch through the holes. And I like to catch that tail thread at least a couple of times, that tail there, at least a couple of times, so that it won't pull loose. And I am kind of fiddling with this, and I'm not actually pulling this all the way down. I'm not cinching it until I get about halfway or so, maybe not quite halfway, because it's a little easier to see if I don't. So half ladder stitch, half whip stitch, half, and just keep going back and forth until you get, now I'm not using these outer ridge, the outer ridge, I'm actually going behind that to attach this so that the outer ridge stays nice and pristine and actually camouflages that I've done, that I've sewn this in. And I'm just going to take this all the way to the top, and then I'm going to go and do the other side just the same way, and I'll be back when I have that done. Alright, and jumping in here before I finish, just to show you, before I kind of tug this back where it belongs, this is what it looks like. And I actually went through the very last stitch, I wrapped it into the top here just to anchor that, and then I just took my needle back down to bury my yarn there, and now I can kind of tug on this and get this pulled over, the ridge pulled, this ridge pulled over a bit there to hide. Oops. Now it kind of hides that edge just a little bit now. So I'm going to add my yarn to here and do the same thing for this side. And I'll be back when I have that done. Okay, I made it to the top of the second door, and I actually took my needle at the top of the door around both the door structure and the top here, and you can see that it's exiting there. That just kind of keeps this pulled up where it needs to be instead of sliding down, and it actually helps keep this front to the outside, keeps it nice and rigid. So here's what it looks like on the inside. It's nicely wrapped, and just by kind of massaging it, now that that ridge right there is actually going to hide the gap, and the other door is now kind of tucked in behind the first door. So all that's left is to finish off your yarn, and I do that just by running it along the seam here, just like that. Then I can actually fasten it off or cut it off there. If it's worrisome for you, you can actually go through and tack each corner, and that'll keep this pulled up. But what's going to happen in just about a minute is we're going to be tacking this, top structure or top crochet piece to the top here. So we're going to use this part and this part here to put those together, slightly overlapping, and by slightly I mean very slightly overlapping, and these corners will actually be held in place, pulled up, because it's going to be stuck on this thing. Okay, it's going to be stuck along there, and this top structure will hold the whole thing rigid and it's not going to go anywhere. So it's up to you. You can fasten the corners if you want, or you can not worry about it, like I'm not going to worry about it. And I'll be right back after I get a drink to try to chill out this raspy voice I have going, and we'll put the last piece together, and we'll be done. I'll be right back. All right, I got my drink, and hopefully it won't sound nearly so raspy. Okay, all I've done is I tied a knot here. This will be cut away later. Excuse me, these allergies are awful this year. I've taken it just through the corner, then wrapped it in a circle on itself, and that's just to hold it. When I'm done, I'll actually be able to cut that away. Okay, so now I need to find, because I've attached it, here's the door right there, I've attached it in the place where I want this kind of funky lumpy section to be in the back, like that. I've attached this in the corner where I want this lump to be. So I'm coming out right there on the top of the wall in the back corner, and now I need this to sit on top of that. So once again, I will be doing this ladder stitch sort of idea where I'm actually going to be working in here, not on the top of the thing. So no stitches will ever be, you won't see any stitches because there won't be any stitches. You're going to actually catch them under here. And that'll force the top of the wall of the TARDIS to sit underneath this cap that we're attaching here. So I've done the ladder stitch on this side, and I'm going to do the whip part on the wall. So there's the ladder, and then the whip, then the ladder, and you'll see I have my pliers just sort of sitting off to the side. That's in case I get it stuck, which has been known to happen. So ladder, then the whip. And I'm not pulling down on each of these stitches. I'm kind of leaving the last, I'm kind of leaving it a little loose. I'm not sure which way is best to, so the camera can see what I'm doing. If your yarn kind of binds up there, just pull it back, by the way, and that actually will help straighten it out. And I don't know if you're seeing this, but this little ridge of slip stitches and just the edge is actually sitting on top of the top edge of the wall. It's just barely, and I do mean barely, covering the top of the wall. And that's exactly what we want. Now what you probably noticed is that I didn't add this top structure in while I'm doing this. I find that it just simply gets in the way. I can't bend this to see what I'm doing. and the camera won't be able to see what I'm doing when I have that in place. So even if I were to be making this without the camera in front of my face, I still wouldn't put this in yet. What I'm going to do is put this in after I've made it all the way around the first wall, the second wall, and halfway through the third one, about halfway. So that the fourth wall is loose and part of the third wall, and then I can actually squeeze that in there and finish up, and it will have a minimal effect. When you do it, you kind of work it until you get it pushed where it belongs, but for now I don't want it in my way. The last little bit will be a little more tricky, just simply because that thing will be in your way, but it's nothing too horrible, and you could probably go ahead and do it with that thing in the way for the whole structure. I just find it a little on the aggravating side, so I'm not going to have it in my way. I'm just going to keep doing it this way, the way I, with it out, with it not in place. Boy, that was terrible grammar there. Sorry. Cameras and talking, and when most of my videos are not talking videos, it's not really my forte. Sorry about that. So I'm coming up on a corner, and I'm going to show you that the corner is just pretty much identical to everything else we've been doing so far. Whip stitch on the bottom, ladder stitch on the top, and make sure you don't catch like I just did. I split the dark blue. See how it's coming through the middle of that? Don't do that. If you do, remember, nothing here is permanent until you fasten off your yarn, and even then it's still not permanent. You just have to cut, making taking a little bit of a risk when you do so, but you can always pull it out, pull it back out, pull all the stitches out, and start over, which when I was making the prototype I probably did about 100 times until I got what I liked. So here I am at the corner, and here's the corner of the top, and I'm just doing exactly what I've been doing. Whip stitch here, too far, here, ladder stitch here, whip stitch. I'm actually going to try to catch this bit, because again, because we did back loops or front loops only there, I don't remember which. There's a little tiny gap, a little tiny hole. It's not a mistake. It's just how the back loops or front loops only works. You end up with a small gap on either end. And to combat that, I'm just going to go a little farther down and add my whip stitch down just a little lower. It's going to look like it was stitched in there. And or like it was crocheted in there and not stitched. And because this top is actually sitting over the edge there, over the edge of the wall, you're never going to see that hole again. It's gonna just all kind of fade in, blend in, I guess maybe is the right word. I keep trying to pull these bars out of my windows there. Don't take the bars off the windows. So I'm going to keep going and finish the second wall and part of the third, and I'll be back when I'm ready to put the top plastic structure in place. I'll be right back. Okay, I've made it to halfway through the third side, and that took me about 10 minutes, just because I wanted to make sure I had each stitch in the right place. So now I'm just kind of stuffing the, just sort of stuffing that structure up into the top of the TARDIS there, and that takes a little finagling, just because it's already stitched in place, but it's not too horrible. There we go. And now I'm just going to continue on, geez, bumping the camera, and maybe I can get this stitched into place, finish stitching it into place. So I'm actually at the door. I don't know if you can see that. I'm at the door there, and oops, I'm on a whip stitch part. So whip stitch, and like I said, with that structure in the way, this becomes slightly, okay, well, more than slightly, a little bit harder to do. So yeah, ladder stitch there, pull it down, whip stitch in the next one, and the next one is a little difficult because it's actually two. You want to catch both, and you're actually going to kind of do a ladder on the top here where the two doors meet, and that'll just help keep the doors shut. There we go, just like that. And then you can go back to doing your modified whip ladder stitch here. Ladder stitch on the, oops, right here. Whip stitch on top of the second door right here. And again, I'm making sure I'm not catching any of this blue details, dark blue details that I've added in. I don't want to catch those because I don't want this particular stitching that I'm doing to be visible anywhere. And if you look at the sides that we've already completed, which here's where we started. I got a tail poking out there. If you look, you're not really seeing. There we go. You're not seeing the stitching I've just done. It is very difficult to see, and that's exactly what we want. And I'm just kind of fixing that pyramid shape, pushing it with my pliers because it was kind of bent a little weird. So I'm going to go ahead and finish. You've already seen all this, and that's going to get boring if I keep showing you. So I will be back when I get to the end, and we'll finish this sucker off. I'll be right back. Alright, I'm at the very end here, and I did say that I was going to cut this knot off, and as I was thinking about this and working on this, I've decided not to do that. I'm afraid that if I do, the next stitches can start to pull out. So what I'm doing is just kind of tucking that under. Under that ridge that we've been working on, and hiding it away. So here I am, last couple of stitches here. Just making sure that I've gone all the way around. And these last few, the last stitch or two is really fiddly to get your needle up into the right area. On the inside where we've been working, and not have it show out here on the outside of the top. Oh geez, keep hitting that. Camera is really close to my project and my hands here, and of course that means I am bumping it at every turn. And now I'm going to take one last whip stitch here at the corner, right here, right here, just to make sure that that last corner is tucked underneath. And now I'm actually just going to go straight through, just like that. And now I can bury my tail thread, which I don't have much left here. That's good. Means I'm not wasting too much. And I'm just going to follow up that corner. There we go. And then I'm going to just finish burying my ends. Just kind of weaving it along the top there. Just like that. And then you can actually, I'm going to actually back slightly on myself, just like that, and go up. Go up a row or two, just like that. And now I'm just going to take my, I'm not actually trying to work my needle through any stitches, I'm just trying to bury my tail there in the top of this structure. And now I can cut this off. And the only thing left to do with this is to add your St. John's ambulance sign, circle sign there, and the pull to open sign right there. And this little guy is done, and I'm just kind of tugging out the protruding edge of the base, and there he is. I'll have some still pictures here at the end, and thank you so much for watching, and I will see you for the next day countdown project. All right, thanks for watching, and I'll see you later. Bye.